There is a silent exhaustion in the world today, a tiredness that sits deeper than lack of sleep, a heaviness that comes not from physical labor, but from psychological noise. For many, the mind has become a battlefield. Too many thoughts, too many expectations, too much comparison, too much of everything, yet not enough peace. And if Krishnamurti were alive today, he would not be surprised. He warned us that the greatest danger to humanity would not be war or famine or technology, but the conditioning of the mind, the slow, unnoticeable shaping of your thoughts by society, by culture, by fear, by desire, by the world shouting at you who you should be. He said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." So if you feel overwhelmed, anxious, lost, or disconnected, you might not be broken. You might simply be waking up from a life that was never truly yours. Krishnamurti believed that most of what we call ourselves is actually just conditioning. You were taught what success means. You were taught what beauty means. You were taught what a good life looks like. You were taught who you should be, long before you had the chance to discover who you actually are. This conditioned self becomes the mask you wear. But the problem is, the mask grows heavy. The expectations you carry are not your own. The dreams you chase are not your own. The fears you obey are not your own. And eventually, the soul begins to suffocate under the weight of an identity that never belonged to it. This is why you feel tired even when you rest. Why you feel overwhelmed even when nothing is wrong. Why you feel lost even when you're doing everything right. You cannot feel whole while living a life built for someone else's idea of who you should be. Krishnamurti said, "Thought, when not understood, becomes a prison." And today, our thoughts are noisier than ever. Every notification adds to the noise. Every opinion from strangers adds to the noise. Every comparison adds to the noise. Your mind becomes a crowded room where your own voice can't be heard. And the more you try to escape your thoughts, the louder they become. Not because something is wrong with you, but because no one ever taught you how to observe the mind without becoming trapped by it. Krishnamurti taught that awareness, pure, unjudging awareness, is the doorway to freedom. He said that when you observe your thoughts without resisting them, without chasing them, without believing everything they tell you, they begin to lose their power. You don't need to control your mind. You need to understand it. And in understanding, it naturally quiets. In a world more connected than ever, people feel more alone than ever. Krishnamurti drew a powerful distinction between loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness is the ache of separation. Aloneness is the freedom of being complete within yourself. Loneliness comes from the fear that you need something outside yourself to be whole. Aloneness is the realization that wholeness was within you all along. When you are lonely, you seek escape through relationships, through entertainment, through distraction. But when you are truly alone, you feel at peace because you are no longer running from yourself. Krishnamurti said, "Only in aloneness is there clarity." And in a time when everyone is drowning in noise, clarity has become the rarest form of wealth. Krishnamurti spoke of comparison as a form of violence, a subtle, quiet violence we direct toward ourselves. And today, comparison is everywhere. Every scroll shows you a life you don't have, a body you don't have, a relationship you don't have, a success you don't have. You begin to measure your worth against illusions. But comparison is a trap because it is endless. The more you compare, the more inadequate you feel. And the more inadequate you feel, the more you compare. Krishnamurti taught that real freedom begins the moment you stop trying to become someone else. and finally begin the journey of being yourself. One of Krishnamurti's deepest teachings was the art of seeing things as they are, without distortion, without judgment, without desire. He said the mind becomes peaceful when it stops trying to force life into a shape it was never meant to hold. Today, people suffer not because of life itself, but because of the story their mind tells them about how life should be. Your mind says, I should be further by now. I should be happier by now. I should be someone else by now. And these shoulds become the chains that keep you from experiencing life as it truly is. Freedom begins when you stop demanding that reality match your expectations and start meeting life with humility, curiosity, and openness. Krishnamurti called attention the highest form of intelligence, not forced attention, not strained focus, but the gentle, watchful awareness of a mind fully present. When you give something your full attention, a conversation, a walk, a breath, a moment of silence, something extraordinary happens. The mind quiets, the heart opens, the world becomes richer. Most people never experience this because their attention is constantly stolen by devices, by trends, by noise, by fear. But the moment you reclaim your attention, you reclaim your life, because attention is the gateway to presence, and presence is the gateway to peace. Krishnamurti believed that fear is the root of suffering. Fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of losing what you love, fear of not being enough. And he taught something radical, that fear dissolves the moment you stop trying to escape it. Fear thrives in avoidance. It shrinks in awareness. When you turn toward fear with curiosity instead of resistance, you begin to realize that fear is simply thought, a projection, a story, a habit. And like any habit, it can be unlearned. Freedom is not the absence of fear. It is the understanding of fear. And understanding begins the moment you stop running. Krishnamurti said, the moment you begin to follow anyone, you cease to follow truth. And in a world where everyone tries to imitate someone else, the most courageous act is to be yourself, not the self shaped by society, not the self shaped by fear, not the self shaped by expectation, but the self you discover when the noise fades, when the mask falls, when the mind becomes clear. This self is quiet, authentic, aware, and deeply alive. This is the self the world needs, because a free mind is a revolutionary force. So if your mind feels noisy, if your heart feels heavy, if your life feels too fast, if you've forgotten how to hear your own voice, slow down, breathe. Krishnamurti taught that peace is not something you seek. It's something you uncover when the mind stops fighting with itself. Your freedom begins not by changing your life, but by finally seeing it clearly. The noise is not who you are. The conditioning is not who you are. The fear is not who you are. You are the awareness behind it all. And the moment you remember this, you return home to yourself.